pineapples. So, everyone's already given their own 2 cents about the Knuckles show, how it's more like a Wade show than Knuckles show. The little bit that it shows Knuckles is good to fine at best. I don't need to talk about it because everyone's talked about it. And what I want to talk more about is the consistency of the story, because that's what concerns me the most. Because objectively, the Knuckles show is fine. The jokes are hit or miss, and it's pretty mid overall. Like, it's a 5, 6 out of 10. I just like the TJ Maxx joke because it's really out of left field. The issue that comes around with IPs is consistency and care, which is why I'm also going to be bringing up the Acolyte in this video, because that's what matters most to the most dedicated members of your fan base. Consistency. First, we're going to go with Knuckles because it's going to be a little bit shorter of a talk. So, the Knuckles show has its issues with the lore. Obviously, the 2 standouts are Chief Pachacamac and Iblis. So I don't think anybody expected Iblis to be in that show. Like, seriously. Iblis, of all characters. The issue comes around with how those characters are sort of treated, because they have a certain place in their own stories. I understand Sonic 06 is not considered to be a canon story, since at the end of it, everything basically gets reset, so nothing really happened. But there's still some basis for what you expect the character to be like. Chief Pachacamac doesn't really get that kind of treatment. Honestly, if they had made him a completely different echidna than Chief Pachacamac, like maybe it was Knuckles' father instead, or maybe they are intending for Knuckles' father to take the role of Chief Pachacamac, but that's to see in the future. But they dropped the ball because Chief Pachacamac in Sonic Adventure 1, and as I showed in my last video with Sonic X, he is a sort of power-hungry leader. If not power-hungry, and he at least is a character who would say the ends justify the means, even if that means mass destruction. But Chief Pachacamac in the Knuckles show is sort of like a watered-down Obi-Wan Kenobi. Like, he's there, he gives Knuckles the general idea of where to go, and then basically disappears until he needs to show up for Wade's, like, mental rock opera, which is a fun scene, but it has some issues with lore. So we get to the issue of that. You don't really have a sort of consistency to a character, or at least choose how you change them very carefully. Now we go to Iblis. Iblis is pretty much the same character from Sonic 06. It is just fire monster who destroys everything and also uses Facebook Marketplace because that was a necessary inclusion. But it's sort of like, why would they choose Iblis? I understand, like, maybe it's like a cute sort of like a reference. It's a little reference to Sonic 06. They might not use Sonic 06 or any content related to it again in a little while, aside from Sonic Generations using the future with Silver. But it's kind of weird that they give Knuckles a power-up that he had beforehand, before the second movie, but he doesn't use it again until after the second movie. So it's a little weird. It's sloppy writing. And that's where a lot of the hardcore fans get concerned. Casual viewers won't really mind anything. Like, about a week or two ago, I watched the Fallout show with my friend. I know nothing about Fallout, and I enjoyed it thoroughly. And he told me that generally they followed the lore of Fallout pretty well. They added a few things that weren't in the games, but they helped to sort of expand the story or build up on the story that they were using, which I can understand. Creative freedoms. If you're going to add something, make sure that it makes sense for the story and that it fits well with the universe. Those are pretty realistic terms to have. So when it came to the Knuckles show, already with the lack of Knuckles, which definitely didn't help to cover up some of the minor issues, you look at how they treated the Sonic Universe content in that show versus the movies, and you're wondering, okay, what's going on here? Because the movies are very respectful to Sonic. They don't follow a lot of Sonic lore, and they've changed up a lot of things that I'm still trying to figure out what's up with the Chaos Emeralds and the Master Emerald. But it's about the respect for the franchise. And so seeing the Knuckles show be like a really sizable dip in the quality of just both the standard of the show, of the movies, and on how well they're using the franchise, it's a little concerning. And then that brings me to the Acolyte with Star Wars. And I'll be honest, I think the Acolyte is a decent show so far. I think if it was just not attached to Star Wars, it would be perfectly fine. Obviously, bad writing does not cover up bad writing, but overall, objectively speaking, if it wasn't attached to any IPs, it is a perfectly decent at best, the power of 2 at worst. But it's when you start to have these strange little hiccups that don't make a lot of sense that you get your most devoted fan base, the ones that are going to show up, they're here to buy your merchandise, to consume your content. When you start making them wonder if they should continue, and you're not pulling in new viewers, you're gonna have some problems. I already heard Disney apparently is faking Acolyte viewership numbers. I don't know if that's fact or not. I've just heard it in passing, but that's not very good, obviously. And I generally enjoy the Acolyte. I think it could be a little snappier, and that it could have used a little bit more time to bake in the oven before they went into production for certain aspects of it. Because looking at it a second time, you can see the issues a little bit easier. But it's when you have little details like the twins being a virgins in the Force. They literally name drop it in the 7th episode. They are looking for a virgins in the Force, which is also what Anakin is in The Phantom Menace. And they don't mention the prophecy of the Chosen One, which definitely would have been around by that time. And then you get into smaller details of argument like Kiadi Mundi, and it makes you a little concerned. Like, a lot of people probably would have had less of a problem if they put a little bit more effort into it. Like, say, make Kiadi Mundi more involved with the story, maybe give him some character depth in the show, like how the Clone Wars gives him a character, Clone Wars TV show. And maybe have it be, although his first line in the prequels is, there hasn't been a Sith in over a millennia, maybe put in some intrigue, like he's trying to take ahead of the whole situation with Khmer and the quote-unquote Sith Lord, and trying to hide it so that the rest of the council doesn't freak out. Like, you could you could take so many different directions to make it interesting, to add a little bit more like flavor to the story. Like, he's gonna die in Revenge of the Sith anyways, so giving him a little bit more character doesn't hurt necessarily. If it doesn't, I'd say if it doesn't interfere character later on, or even say like going off of that idea that he's trying to cover it up, like that's an extra layer onto his character. That Ki-Adi-Mundi would rather maintain the bottom line of the Jedi Order and cover up issues than, say, just not doing anything with it. And also, if they just made him any other random Jedi, I don't think anyone had problems with it. People started bringing up problems because they started noticing a few plot holes. And even though it's a minor detail, if you're not getting the minor details right, or at least not caring enough to put more effort into the minor details, you're gonna have some issues with your fans on the major details. It's all about consistency. That's more or less the summary of the video. When you're making a IP story, focus on trying to be consistent. If you want to break the rules that have been established, do it in a way that is interesting enough to warrant its existence, or make it twist the rules in a way that it can still flow with them in a sort of awkward, or not awkward, in an interesting fashion, so people will be on board to see what you have to say. But also, if you insult all of your fans and call them bad names because they're not liking the product that you're making, that's not very good for your bottom line. Anyways, that's the video. Hope you enjoyed, and have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye!